Hey, it's DBJ, and it's Monster Monday. And I thought we'd talk super senses. Um, Currently released in theaters, there's a movie called A Quiet Place. And this has sparked some creative elements in my head. Now, this is spoiler free. I have not seen the movie. So I apologize if during this talk I say some things that parallel the movie, but I have not seen the movie, and I do not intend on spoiling the movie. But I do want to bring up some things that we can use in our role playing games that involve this movie. Now, the biggest thing that this movie is about, and what I'm going to talk about, are monsters with super senses, super hearing, tremor sense, thermal vision, super enhanced smell and tracking ability, using those abilities. And in many ways, having the abilities so enhanced that they also have a limitation as well. So, for example, let's start with the very first example, which is based on this movie, which is the ability to hear the slightest sound. Now, for Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition and various editions thereof, there is an ability called Tremor Sense, which is very closely tied to the ability to hear and sense sound and vibration, while sound essentially is vibration that we then register as sound. So the concept in this movie is that the world has been overrun with these creatures that attack anything that makes a sound, and the louder the sound, the more they go berserk and go after it. All right, so there are plenty of creatures, the most notable being the boule, the bullet, the land shark, purple worms, many subterranean creatures. There's even a subterranean humanoid race that's blind that can hear. And we can increase the tension in our games by using these creatures, by having them not react to things that they cannot sense, or deign not to react to because they rely so heavily on, say, their hearing. For example, you could have the players come into a village or a valley or something, and the people there do not speak at all. They write things down on wax boards, they use sign language, they warn strangers to be quiet. And it's possible that at night or when the fog settles, that these massive, dangerous, bloodthirsty creatures walk through this village in this valley, and the people just stand still. And these massive creatures just walk right past them, not maybe even rubbing against them. Small children, moms holding their babies, the men just being quiet, and sweat pouring down their brow as they just remain still, and these predators just move through their village, rubbing against their bodies, walking into their homes, sliding against buildings, or if they're nomadics, moving in and out of their tents. And imagine the player character who discovers that, hey, if we just quiet, maybe they'll just go away, and maybe they start sniffing around the player character's camp. Now, of course, the first instinct would be monster, player characters, draw sword, cast spell, fight, fight, fight. But as the game master, as dungeon master, it is your function to give the players enough evidence to know how and why, and the motivation, the intention, the instincts of these creatures. For example, maybe the player characters get in battle with these land sharks or something, and one of the players casts a spell that is very loud, thunder based or something, or casts a charm spell, speaking, whatever. Maybe the creature turns its attention away from being hacked and slashed at towards this sound. Now, we don't have to limit ourselves to creatures that only have tremor sense or heightened hearing. We can reskin damn near any creature we want in the game. gargoyles and manticores to um, uh, dire wolves to anything. And you can even give physical evidence. You know, they have no eyes, or maybe they have bodies like the alien creature from the Alien movie franchise, where they have, you know, razor sharp teeth and a maw jaws full of bladed teeth, but no eyes. Now, this also brings up the narrative subject of, if a creature can only hear, is it affected by illusions? And my answer would be, if the illusion is only auditory, sure. If not, oh well. Now there are ways to get around this. We have ourselves the silence spell. We have cantrips that can make sound in other areas, and temporarily these things can you may give advantage to certain characters for using a cantrip to create the sound of a rock, maybe, you know, 80 feet away while they run for it. I would definitely allow that to happen. Silent spells would be very effective, but then again, how will the player characters communicate with each other? Sure, they may have a shorthand sign language, especially if they've battled with each other for years, but maybe someone wants to describe something that's very complex and unable to do so because they're in the grips of silence. Now, of course, the creatures don't have to be completely mindless. I mean, if something attacks them, they can easily turn around and attack what is attacking them, but they may not have any sense of or instinctual need to detect things sneaking up on them, especially if they're an apex predator. So the difference between, we also have to establish a difference between a tremor sense and heightened hearing, auditory sense. So for example, tremor sense is more of a vibration, of movement, maybe movement in the air, movement on the ground. And burrowing creatures are notorious for being able to sense that type of movement. And so, therefore, it's not necessarily not making noise, but it would be standing still. That would be the defense, the ability to gain some form of advantage or offer some form of disadvantage, whether it's mechanical or narrative, to the creatures in the encounter. With sound, the player characters can still move around, especially your more stealthy monks and rogues can move around and use stealth actions, while, you know, the louder warrior types in heavy metal may draw the creature towards them and allow the stealthier types to sneak around behind, set a trap, sneak away, that kind of thing. So there are other senses super senses we can use for our creatures, right? We can use thermal vision. Now, in earlier editions of Dungeons and Dragons, there was a difference between dark vision and thermal vision. We've defaulted now to just dark vision, but thermal vision you could imagine with the Predator or night vision cameras, where footsteps and the palm of your hands on cold surfaces will appear and allow thermal imaging to happen. Player characters that try to hide behind trees and rocks may be seen when the creature tries to maneuver around this dark object, and then sees the heat pattern of the player character, whether it's a shadow of their essence or their actual bodies themselves. Again, allowing the player characters to use things like maybe like a ray of frost or create water to lower their body temperatures temporarily to fool the creatures during the encounter and then gain an advantage. Now, remember, DMs out there, you have an infinite number of creatures. If the player characters instantly realize what's going on, then they're just smart. If they don't realize what's going on, then hit them in the head with the clue stick. You know, hand over the clues. Punishing your players for not imagining, being in your head and not imagining what you are thinking is just wrong. So if the challenge is far harsher, far more dangerous than you had planned, allow an NPC or allow an Arcana check or history check, nature, survival check, or even a religion check to hand over a few more pieces of evidence in this fight. But you can really ramp up the tension if the player characters maybe are in a camp and this really dangerous creature starts to stalk through their camp and completely ignores them while they're sleeping. Maybe one of the player characters opens their eye and sees the creature go by, hears the sound of a rabbit, and then scurries off and attacks this rabbit in the woods. And when the other players start to gather together, one of the players says, "Shh, quiet." And then the tension starts. So you can also give evidence, just when my description of going after the rabbit, you can have the player characters maybe spot these creatures engaging in their normal hunting behaviors and then extrapolate out of that. Wait a minute, the rabbit ran towards the waterfall is loud, the creature does not go after the rabbit, but then when the rabbit runs away from the waterfall into the woods, the creature perks up and then chases after it, something like that. But anyway, I just thought I'd bring that up for Monster Monday. I thought it would be really cool to, hyper advance the senses of one creature and then using one or more of its other senses as its huge disadvantage, where it may be blind or cannot smell. Now, let's go with this last part of super senses with the smell. Same thing there. Maybe it can smell a particular race or spell components or the after effects of a fire spell or the ozone of electrical arcs from a electrical spell, or maybe it smells the player characters because they just came out of a sewer system or something like that. Anything. And again, giving some sort of evidence where maybe the creature, they're like wolf-like creatures that are sniffing around, but they are not using their vision. They're tracking by scent. And so this is a good way for your players to be creative in problem solving. And game masters and dungeon masters out there, if you create the situation, allow your players to be creative. I've said times before that if the only measurement of success is causing damage, then the only people that will succeed are those that cause damage in the first place. If you don't allow your players to be creative and solve problems creatively, they will eventually, you will train your players. Yes, you will learn them the ability to distrust you and only use those methods that will bring about success. So allow your players to sabotage things, to use creative methods to problem solve. I think you will be surprised, they will be surprised, and it'll just create such great synergy. So anyway, I'm DBJ. Thanks for deep diving with me. I'm a contributing writer over at Critical Hit Publishing. I am your self-appointed third pillarist, and thanks for your attention.